You hear the hoofbeats fade into silence. The burning has stopped. The screaming has stopped. You're standing in what used to be a marketplace, but the stalls are ash now, and the ground is warm under your feet. Around you, women who were daughters, mothers, poets, merchants, wives, just yesterday are being lined up like horses at auction. Their eyes are empty, but they're not dead. Not yet. That's when you understand the war didn't end when the gates fell. It's only now beginning, and you are the battlefield. Before we go further into this darkness, I want to know where in the world you're watching this from. It genuinely amazes me that a story this old, this brutal, can reach someone on the other side of the planet right now. If you're here, you're part of keeping these voices alive. What I'm about to show you isn't just another conquest story. This is something far more calculated, far more devastating than the simple clash of armies. Between 1206 and 1368, the Mongol Empire built the largest contiguous land empire in human history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Vienna. But empires aren't built with horses alone. They're built with systems. And the Mongols perfected a system so efficient, so psychologically devastating, that it didn't just defeat armies, it erased entire peoples from existence. At the center of this machine was a deliberate, methodical campaign targeting one group above all others, women, not as collateral damage, as the primary objective. Here's what makes your blood freeze. Roughly 16 million men alive today carry a Y chromosomal lineage that traces directly back to the Mongol imperial period. That's not a footnote. That's genetic evidence of conquest written into the very fabric of human DNA. It's proof that what happened to women during the Mongol conquests wasn't chaos or the unfortunate byproduct of war. It was policy. It was strategy. And it worked with terrifying precision. The year is 1220, and the city of Bukhara stands as one of the jewels of the Islamic world. Its libraries hold works of mathematics that won't be matched in Europe for 3 more centuries. Its poets are quoted from Damascus to Delhi. Its population of 300,000 makes it one of the largest cities on earth. When Genghis Khan's army arrives, they don't immediately attack. Instead, emissaries ride forward with a message that's been refined through dozens of previous conquests. Whoever submits shall be spared. Those who resist, they shall be destroyed with their wives, children, and dependents to the last descendant. Notice the specificity. Wives and children get their own clause. That's not accidental language. That's the promise of something worse than death, and the Mongols made sure everyone knew exactly what it meant. Because 3 cities over, Samarkand had resisted, and the stories from Samarkand traveled faster than any army ever could. The governor of Bukhara opens the gates without a fight. But in Nishapur, 400 miles west, they choose differently. The city has walls 40 feet high, granaries that could sustain a siege for years, and a garrison of experienced soldiers. They've heard the rumors from Samarkand, but they've also heard rumors before. How bad could it really be? They decide to resist. It's February 1221 when the Mongol siege engines arrive. The city falls in 3 days. What happens next was recorded by multiple Persian historians, each account more horrific than the last, yet all confirming the same basic facts. The Mongol commander was Tekukur Sunanla of Genghis Khan himself. During the siege, he's killed by an arrow from the walls. When the city falls, his widow, a daughter of Genghis Khan, personally oversees what follows. She orders a complete census. Every living person in Nishapur is to be counted and categorized, then killed, but not randomly. With bureaucratic precision, the men are separated first, execution is swift. Their heads are piled in pyramids outside the city walls, arranged by height so the count can be verified from a distance. The women and children are separated next. Here's where the widow takes personal command. She wants the work done thoroughly, she says. She wants to make sure the lesson is clear. The women of noble birth are examined, categorized by age and appearance. The most beautiful are claimed immediately by Mongol officers. The rest are divided, some for the slave markets, some for the camps, some marked for a different purpose. When archaeologists excavated the site of Nishapur in the 20th century, they found something that stopped them cold. Beneath centuries of accumulated soil, they discovered a layer of ash and debris several feet thick, covering artifacts from one of history's greatest cities. But here's what haunted them. In certain areas, they found evidence of mass pyres, and in those pyres, mixed with the ash, thousands of bone fragments, small ones, children. The death toll at Nishapur is estimated at 1.7 million people. That number has been debated. Some historians argue it's inflated, that the city couldn't have held that many. But even the most conservative estimates put it at several 100,000. And here's the critical detail that every source agrees on. The killing took 3 full days, and it was systematic, organized, recorded. This wasn't rage, this was industrial. But we need to talk about what happened to the women who weren't killed, because death, in many cases, was mercy. There's a Persian word that appears repeatedly in the chronicles from this period. Sabaya, it means captive women, specifically women taken as war prizes. But the Mongol use of sabaya was different from anything that had come before. This wasn't opportunistic plunder. This was demographic engineering. When a Mongol warrior claimed a captive woman, she wasn't just a concubine or a slave. She was a vessel for replacement. The strategy was brilliant in its cruelty. Force the conquered women to bear the conqueror's children. And you don't just defeat the present generation, you overwrite the future. Those children would be raised Mongol. They would speak Mongolian, worship Tengri, the sky god, ride in Mongol saddles. Their mother's language would be forbidden. Her religion suppressed. Her stories untold. Within a single generation, you could make an entire ethnicity simply vanish, not through extinction, but through forced assimilation. In 2003, geneticists led by Dr. Tatiana Ziriel published a study that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. They'd identified a Y chromosomal lineage present in roughly 0.5% of all men globally, approximately 16 million individuals that originated in Mongolia around 1,000 years ago and spread across Asia with impossible speed. The only explanation that fits the genetic evidence is a massive, sustained campaign of conquest-driven reproduction. One lineage, one origin point. Millions of descendants across 24 modern countries. That's not natural population growth. That's the genetic signature of empire, written in human DNA. Let me make this concrete. Imagine you're a woman named Amina. You're 24 years old, living in Herat in 1221. You've been educated unusual for the time, but your father was a scholar, and he believed daughters should learn to read. You've memorized sections of Rumi's poetry. You study astronomy. Your marriage has been arranged to a merchant's son from a good family. You have a future mapped out in your mind, children you can already imagine, a life lived in the same house your grandmother grew up in. Then the Mongols come. Your husband is killed defending the walls. Your father is executed in the main square along with every other male over the age of 12 who could read or write. Your brothers are in the pyramids of heads being constructed outside the city as proof of the body count. You're pulled from your home by soldiers who don't speak your language. You're examined teeth, hair, body, the way you've seen horse traders examine mares at market. A Mongol officer points at you. You're claimed. 9 months later, you give birth to his son. The midwife is another captive woman. She whispers prayers in a language you don't recognize. Maybe she's from Merv or Urgenj, cities that fell before yours. The baby is taken from you 3 days later. He'll be raised in a gur, the traditional Mongol tent. He'll learn to ride before he can walk properly. He'll be taught that the sky god Tengri guides the righteous. He will never learn Persian. He will never read Rumi. He will never pray in the direction of Mecca. And he will never ever know that his mother once studied the stars. You continue breathing, continue existing. But everything you were, your lineage, your culture, the future you imagined, is already extinct. This happened to tens of thousands of women across dozens of cities. It was systematic, it was policy, and it was devastatingly effective. But the Mongols understood something that most conquerors throughout history missed. You can't just erase a people's future. You have to break their present. You have to shatter their sense of identity so completely that resistance becomes unthinkable. That's where the second weapon in their arsenal became crucial: public humiliation as psychological warfare. In traditional Islamic society, family honor was inseparable from the protection of women. Female modesty wasn't just a religious principle, was the foundation of social order. Women of noble birth lived their entire lives in seclusion, seen only by immediate family. The Mongols identified this as a pressure point and applied force with surgical precision. February 13, 1258. Baghdad falls after a 12-day siege. This isn't just another city. This is the seat of the Abbasid Caliphate, the political and spiritual center of the Islamic world, home to the House of Wisdom, where scholars have preserved and advanced human knowledge for 5 centuries. The Mongol army is led by Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis. When the walls are breached, what follows is systematic annihilation. Estimates of the death toll range from 200,000 to over 1 million. The Tigris River reportedly runs black with ink from destroyed manuscripts, then red with blood. But here's where the psychological warfare becomes most refined. The women of the Caliph's palace women, who have literally never been seen by male eyes outside their immediate family. Women whose seclusion was considered sacred are dragged into the streets. Their veils are torn away, their clothing is stripped, and they're paraded through the markets while the city burns. These are the mothers, wives, daughters of the man who claimed spiritual authority over hundreds of millions of Muslims. To see them exposed, humiliated, degraded in public view isn't just an assault on those individual women. It's a message broadcast to every surviving witness. Your leaders cannot protect even those closest to them. Your God did not intervene. Your civilization is already dead. You're just still breathing. The women are then sold in the slave markets that spring up in the ruins. Some go for as little as a single silver coin. The price isn't about economics, it's about contempt. For the men who survive, this is a wound that transcends physical injury. You didn't just lose the war, you lost your fundamental identity as a protector, your place in the social order, your honor. That psychological devastation echoes through generations. And critically, it was advertised. Cities 1,000 miles away heard what happened in Baghdad. The message was clear: surrender immediately and keep your dignity. Resist, and we'll make sure your descendants are ashamed to speak your name. This is terror as technology. This is cruelty as strategy. But there's a third weapon we need to discuss, one so brutal that when Persian historians first recorded it, readers assumed it had to be exaggeration. Multiple independent sources confirm it wasn't. The tactic was called kharash in Persian human cattle. When the Mongols besieged a city, they would drive captives from previously conquered cities forward at sword point toward the walls. Women carrying infants, elderly people, children, all forced to advance as the Mongol army assembled behind them with siege equipment. The defenders faced an impossible choice: shoot arrows and kill your own people, or hold fire and watch the Mongols advance siege towers using human shields. Either choice destroyed morale. If you shot, you were murdering innocents. If you didn't, you doomed your own city to fall. The Persian historian At-Malik Juvani, who traveled with Hulagu Khan's army, recorded this practice multiple times. The Secret History of the Mongols references it. Chinese chronicles describe the same tactic. If you were a captive woman, your final purpose might be to fall into a moat so your body could be used as filiatoral construction. Material, so the men who enslaved you could walk over your corpse to enslave the next city. Archaeological excavations at several siege sites have found mass graves at the base of city walls. Bodies killed not by attackers storming the walls, but by a defensive fire from above. The physical evidence confirms the chronicles the human shield was doctrine. And if you survived the siege, if you somehow made it through being used as a living barrier, your reward was a 1,000-mile forced march to a slave market. Welcome to the fourth weapon, continental-scale human trafficking. The Mongol Empire at its height stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. It ran on multiple currencies: silver, silk, horses. But the most valuable commodity flowing through its trade networks was human beings. After each conquest, the sorting began immediately. Skilled artisans, especially Chinese engineers and Persian craftsmen, were sent to Karakoram or other Mongol capitals. Laborers were assigned to work camps. Women, especially young women, were the most sought-after commodity in the empire's slave markets. When Genghis Khan invaded the Khwarazmian Empire between 1219 and 1221, the population dropped from 15 million to less than 7 million. Millions didn't just die, they were sold into slavery, scattered across Asia. Women from Uzbekistan were sent to Mongolia, and women from Baghdad to China. The Mongols established the most efficient slave trade system since Rome, with markets, standardized pricing, and even warranties replacements for slaves who died within the first month. Women were the primary targets of this vast, forced migration. A woman from Nishapur could be sold from Samarkand to Beijing, 4,000 miles from home. Over generations, entire ethnic groups were erased from existence, their languages and cultures lost. Central Asia's genetic mix today is a reflection of this traumatic displacement. But the Mongols' weaponry extended beyond violence. They also deliberately targeted cultural memory. Poets, historians, and religious scholars were killed. The burning of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad led to books being thrown into the Tigris, and with them, the knowledge that could rewrite history. Women, as the primary carriers of culture, were systematically removed, ensuring that generations would grow up without their ancestral stories or traditions. This wasn't just a battle for land, it was an attack on the very continuity of civilization. The Mongols' conquest didn't just kill it erased. It wasn't merely a demographic shift. It was the destruction of entire cultures, leaving no trace of their once vibrant histories. The proof is written in genetics, in archaeology, in the Persian chronicles that recorded these events with shaking hands. The proof is in the languages that went extinct, the cities that vanished, and the 16 million men who carry Mongol DNA today without knowing the stories of the women who bore their ancestors. In the ruins of Nishapur, there's a section where archaeologists found something that still haunts researchers. Among the ash layer, they discovered fragments of children's toys, small clay animals, a wooden horse, pieces of what might have been dolls. These objects survived the fires. The children who played with them did not, and neither did their mothers or their mothers' mothers, or the stories those grandmothers would have told about who they were and where they came from. The Mongol Empire eventually fractured and fell, as all empires do. But what happened to the women during those campaigns of conquest didn't end when the empire collapsed. It's still written in the DNA of millions. It's still visible in the genetic maps that show Mongol lineage spread across 24 modern nations. It's preserved in the silence where languages used to be, in the empty deserts where great cities once stood, in the chronicles that recorded atrocities so systematic they sound like administrative reports. These women died once in body, once when their stories were forgotten. What I've told you today is a kind of resurrection, incomplete and centuries too late, but necessary. Because the machine the Mongols built didn't run on horses or swords or even superior tactics. It ran on the calculated, systematic destruction of women's bodies, women's futures, and women's voices. And that machine was so effective that 800 years later, we're still living in the world it created. The hoofbeats have long since faded into silence. The fires went cold centuries ago. But if you listen carefully to the genetics, to the archaeology, to the gaps in the historical record where entire peoples used to be, you can still hear the echo of what was done. Not the thunder of horses, not the clash of steel, the other sound, the one that came after, the one history almost let us forget.